Hey everyone, welcome to this week's episode of my podcast, Is Breakfast Included? How are you guys doing? Good? Good. Today on the show, I sit down with Gavin Elder. Now, Gavin is a video and film director who's worked with the likes of Duran Duran, David Gilmour, acdc, plus a host of other bands and projects. We talked a little bit about how he got his start in filmmaking, managing bands, meeting Duran Duran, and what kickstarted his career in this industry. He's got a lot of great stories. Gavin's an interesting individual and an amazing person. He's a great friend, and he's just one of the best out there. Anyway, it was a great conversation, and I hope you dig it. Let's check it out. Introduce yourself to everyone.
Hi, Bernie. My name is Gavin Elder, and I am a filmmaker.
Filmmaker.
Well, I mean, that's always a funny word, isn't it? Filmmaker. Well, it's not a funny word. Filmmaker, video maker. I do so many different things in the video world. In other words, it's, you know, I don't make films as in movie films, but I do make. Hang on, I think I'm getting lost track here. I mean, I've worked in video for a long time, and I guess that I started when my dad had this video camera that would have been the sort of the mid '80s, I think. Very, very basic thing. But I picked it up and started using it to make little videos of friends and things, and that led me on a journey which has lasted sort of 40 years, I guess. And I'm still doing that and working with different cameras. And
was it a Super 8 camera? Or was it?
He had a Super 8, but that was before I was tiny then. So he was using that. And we have some great Super 8 family videos. I think he would have loved to have been a filmmaker himself, perhaps. But he was involved in textile design, so something completely different.
Okay.
From Scotland.
Oh.
And when I was very young, they emigrated from the UK to South Africa and to Cape Town, and that's where I grew up.
In Cape Town.
Yeah, in Cape Town. And spent school and university there, and then slowly worked my way back north to Europe, and then have now based in London.
Okay, so you got into film early on, like you said.
Yeah, sort of school days, I guess. And then I was DJing a lot as well. I DJed all through my sort of high school years, and then into university. And then the DJing led me to work with musicians, and I started managing a band, and they had no resources or money. So I started taking their photographs, and then I made videos for them. And so that was a way of sort of combining my love of music and film at a very sort of, there were no rules or there were no really rules as to how we went about it. And we had a camera, and so we would just go out and shoot these very, very basic but fun music videos for a band in Cape Town.
Was there ever a time that you wanted to do music more than you wanted to do video making or anything, or did you always have it? Were they always just part of the same thing?
Yeah, I think it was part of the same thing. I play guitar just for fun at home. I was never in a band or anything like that. But when I DJed, I did have a sort of an early Korg sampling keyboard, and we'd introduce those sort of sounds into some of the records that I was playing. So it was a bit of a live element, but very, very rudimentary. And then I guess I worked for a radio station. I managed bands. We toured all over South Africa. And interestingly, when Duran Duran toured South Africa, the band I was managing actually supported them at a gig. This is way before I'd come across, before I'd met the guys in Duran. So there were these weird coincidences. And I actually DJ'd at a party, a New Year's Eve party one night in Cape Town, and Simon and Yasmin were at the party. And again, 20 years later, I'm spending a lot more time with them.
More time than you'd like?
Oh, well, no, not at all.
People always ask me when they find out that I work for Duran Duran, they're like, do you get to see John Taylor? I'm like, whether I want to or not, I see him all the time.
Yeah.
But it's that that like I wasn't a fan. I just came into this band by accident,
Right.
and here I am 11 years later.
That's sometimes the best way.
I know, right?
Yeah.
If you're not planning it, it
Yeah.
just happens.
Yeah.
You said you went to university. Did you study film there, or something? Is film just? Did you kind of have your own style already going into that?
Yeah, I didn't study it. I studied English, but what I did do at university was I joined the university radio station, and that was a lot of fun, and gave me an insight into different styles of music. It was a difficult time in South Africa. I was at university in the mid-'80s, and the apartheid regime was still in power. They were oppressing people. They would raid the campus. The police would raid the campus. They shut down our radio station because it was seen as a voice of dissent. So it was a very informative time for me politically as well. Film-wise, I think I just developed a style just by doing it. I didn't study film. We'd just pick up the camera, and you'd learn from your mistakes. So once I'd made some initial music videos, there was a television show that got in touch with me saying they wanted to feature that band on television. And so I said, "Oh, that's great." And I said, "I know lots of bands." And they said, "Well, why don't you become involved in the show?" And I had access to friends who were artists and musicians, so we started getting them on this sort of teen documentary weekend show in South Africa. And I learned a lot through that process as well, in working with different cameramen and editors and producers and things. So that was also a lucky break, which I just sort of took advantage of and explored further.
So you learning every day more and more about
still learning
filmmaking?
Yeah, and still making mistakes and still learning.
How did you become involved with Duran Duran?
So I was living in Japan in the early 2000s. My wife had a job there, and we were living in Tokyo. And Duran had just got back together, the original 5 members, and they were doing a few shows in Japan. And I had a call from, we had a mutual friend. There was a guy that Simon knows that I know in Tokyo. And I had a call from Wendy Leister, the band's manager, saying, "We've got these 4 or 5 shows. Would you be able to film them and give us the footage?" So I said, "Yeah, that sounds great." And I'd worked with a lot of bands in South Africa and international bands that were touring in South Africa. So it felt, I felt very comfortable doing something like that. And we filmed the 4 shows in different parts of Japan. I think it was Osaka, Tokyo, Fukuoka, I think. And the day before the band left, that night I got home and I put a little edit together in probably a couple of minutes of just the highlights of what I thought represented Duran Duran in Japan. And she saw that and she showed it to the band. And I had a call later saying, "Look, we're going to Los Angeles tomorrow. Can you come with us?" And that was the beginning of my sort of 20-year relationship with Duran Duran.
So was that quick? Were you able to go with him the next day?
It was so quick. I said to my wife, "Look, I've got this call. I've got this opportunity. I've got to take it." And the one thing my wife's boss had said was, "We're going to help you get a Japanese visa, but whatever you do, you cannot leave the country for 1 month." And I had to leave. And so I did, and that messed up various things with visas, but they sorted it out. But yeah.
Was Duran the first big band that you ever worked with?
Yeah, I'd done in South Africa bands like Cypress Hill had been out, and I'd done some video work with them, and The Violent Femmes had been out. So there were a few interesting indie type bands that had done tours in South Africa, which I had covered. But working directly with the band, this was the first time a band of that scale and that reputation. And I'd had Duran records. I'd played Duran records when I was DJing, so I was very familiar with their music.
Were you nervous?
I'm sure I was.
Or was there
terrified? Yeah.
Or was there? You could. I asked if you're nervous, but at the same, were you confident you could do the gig?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I remember meeting Roger for the first time then, and he hadn't been involved in music for a long time, or hadn't been associated with Duran for a long time. So they were all a bit nervous as well. Would this tour work out? Would they be able to relaunch themselves to the world? And it was very, very successful, and that gave them the confidence to then carry on and be. After that was 2003, I think, and I remember there was a really big tour in 2005, big world tour that took us everywhere.
Yeah, I've seen you work around the band. I've seen you around. Was it easy just making yourself like a fly on the wall from the get-go?
Yeah, I think that's very much my style, is not to intrude too much, but then at the same time, you've got to know when you need interesting material. So it's knowing when to step in and then when to step back. And I think that's something that again, just you learn through experience. But they're also very accommodating as well.
I was going to ask, were they welcoming, or were they kind of?
No, very much so, because we've both got to be contributing to the process to get good material. And if they can see that there's a line and there's a certain amount of respect, then I think they rise to that and help you get what you need as well, what I needed to get. So,
yeah. The tour, the big tour that came after that, was that a challenge? Like, it was a big deal when the five came back together. So was that like, did you look at that as a challenge for you? Like, I have to make this band like bigger than life again.
Yeah, it's a challenge. It was exciting. It was a long tour. My wife was pregnant at the time, and so I was juggling this. Baby, am I there for the birth? Of course, I've got to be. So if they're playing that night, then there's no ways I can be around. But recently, last week actually, I was looking through some old T-shirts that I had of Duran, and one of them was a show they did in Birmingham, I think around the 28th of May in 2005. And I was looking at this date, and I remembered filming the show. And then I looked at the date, and my son was born on the 22nd of May, 6 days before. So 6 days after he was born, I was back on the road, and I was sort of going, oh, that's why my wife was so furious at the time. So it was. But that tour, that 2005 tour, I mean, it really was a world tour, and it was exhausting. I remember towards the end, people were getting sick, and tempers were fraying, but at the same time, it was the most incredible experience. And I had never been on some, I think it was like 42 or 52 dates in America. So it was long, exciting, and very rewarding, I think, personally and professionally.
Any particular experience that stood out more than the rest on that tour? Was there something that you just found yourself there and thought, I never thought I'd be here, but here I am?
Yeah, I think there are lots of those moments with Duran, because when they're touring, they really have an interest in the cities that they're visiting. I've worked with some artists that just stay in the hotel rooms, and they don't venture out. Whereas Duran, they really want to explore and embrace the culture of the city that they're in. And I think they feel quite grateful that their job enables them to do that, to give them access to things. And we've been to all sorts of, I can't remember the exact dates, but we've been to the Hermitage in St. Petersburg and had this tour, which is phenomenal. And we were in Pennsylvania once, I think. Or was it Philadelphia? We were in Philadelphia once, and we had access to the Salvador Dali show. And we'd rushed around with Nick and John, perhaps. But so we have these cultural insights to cities and experiences which I would never have normally got. I remember David Lynch was asked to do a concert with them in Los Angeles for a special event. And that again was another highlight for me meeting him and for the band as well. And then his producer then got in touch with me a year later to do another project with him, independent of Duran. So Duran have opened lots of doors for me as well. So it's been a fantastic journey.
I do remember the David Lynch show. I had just come on board
with this crew.
right.
It was at the Mayan.
That's right.
That was a great show.
Yeah.
And then I've never seen the actual film
Okay.
that we did, but I've heard a lot about it.
Yeah, it's
I heard I'm in it a lot.
Really? Yeah, I mean, that's definitely worth having a look. I mean, he's just fantastic. I remember there was one scene where there's a spatula beating a steak on a barbecue or something in time with the music. And it was just crazy ideas that were then projected over the band.
Who else have you worked for other than Duran?
I mean, they've been assorted artists. There's a British singer called Robbie Williams that I did quite a bit of work with. And then with Take That, Mark Ronson, I've worked with him on some of his solo projects. ACDC, I did some great tours with them, particularly live at the River Plate in Buenos Aires, which is a phenomenal show. They did 3 nights there. Really just amazing fans, phenomenal experience. And then I've worked a lot with David Gilmour from Pink Floyd. And I met him, I think, around 2006 maybe. And I've got on to, I did a lot of his behind the scenes work and working on albums. So spending a long time with him in the studio, filming him and watching him, which is an incredible experience, to be with somebody that's such a master of the guitar.
Yeah.
And then he then asked me to film some of his concerts as well. So I directed live in Gdansk in the Polish shipyards, which was just a monster of a show. And more recently, I directed the live at Pompeii, which was David returning to Pompeii after, I think it was 40 odd years, because in the 70s, Pink Floyd did this phenomenal show in Pompeii without an audience. And David returned with an audience. The first time there'd been an audience in that Roman amphitheater, they say, since there were Romans there. So it's the first show since, I think, 79 AD when the Mount Vesuvius erupted. So it's really. And he's an incredible musician and an incredible man.
Is he involved, or does he kind of trust you to do your own thing?
Oh, he's very involved. He's
just not there doodling on his
He's
guitar.
not just doodling. No, doodling is not something he wouldn't describe it. No, he has a creative vision, and then he works with people that he trusts to realize that vision. And a lovely team, lovely crew, lovely everybody that's involved with him is carefully chosen. Amazing band. It's all about the music.
Yeah. He is. He's an amazing. Both me and my partner are huge fans of David Gilmour.
Okay.
So, are you still working with him, or is?
Yeah. I am. I mean, with lockdown, it's obviously been put a big pause on things. Just right at the beginning of lockdown, in March 2009, was it 19 or 20? 20. We were actually flying to Hydra in Greece to do some work. I was doing some filming for his wife, who's an author, Polly Sampson. And we filmed a music video for David in Hydra as well. And coming back, I remember we were wearing gloves, and it was just right at that beginning of the pandemic, not knowing which way it was going to go. And I haven't seen him since then. So I haven't seen him for 2 years. We chat on the phone and things, but it's time for a face-to-face meeting.
It is.
If you're listening, David.
I hope you're listening, David. You just mentioned you did some work with his wife.
She wrote a book called A Theatre for Dreamers, which is set on the island of Hydra at the time when Leonard Cohen was staying on Hydra. Leonard Cohen bought a house there, I think it was the early 60s. And there was this artist community that lived on the island. And Polly's written this amazing book about that time. And David then, about that time. Let's leave it there.
Yeah. I see the way you are with Duran and the way you're talking about David. Is that how it is with all the artists you work with? They kind of bring you in almost like family.
I would say, yes, some of them, yeah. Not all of them, because different
Some of them are just a gig.
Yeah, some of them are just, they have a different requirement, I guess, or they don't want to engage, different personas. Working with David Gilmour, it's very much about you're welcomed into the family, and it's and it really is a close knit and wonderful unit that he works with. With Duran, it's similar. It's very relaxed. I think that happens if after working with anybody for 20 years, you develop a relationship and a trust, you want to achieve the best you can for them because there's this great relationship.
Yeah. Well, I've seen you around since I've been around. Of course, you were with them long before I do, but I notice whenever you're in the room with us, all bets are off. Everyone, as they say, everyone takes the piss out of each other.
Right.
And that's how I know it's just you're around family.
Right. Yeah. There's just the guards come down, and it's just they can be who they want, who they really are, I guess, as well.
If you weren't doing filmmaking, is there anything else you ever wanted to do?
I've always had an interest in music. I think it's funny, but being around musicians makes you think, maybe I could have done that too. But I do realize how difficult it is and how challenging it is and how lucky you need to be to have that break that brings you to a bigger audience. But I do like to be anonymous as well. I'm very pleased I'm not, honest. I'm glad my photo's not on the poster.
You're very pleased you can walk down the road.
Very, very pleased, yeah.
You're just another guy with a camera.
I'm just, and I've been on things where people say, stop that filming! Oh, it's you, Gavin. All right, okay.
Any plans for the future? Like, do you have anything that, like a labor of love, something you've been working on that you will get around to?
The vegetable garden, really. It's if I can beat the snails. Not really. No, life is pretty busy with the occasional touring trips and 2 teenage boys. So at the moment, it's just more of what I'm doing, and we've got some big projects with Duran. They're going out on this big tour this year, and we've been here in Los Angeles at the moment, where we are now, filming for a film that's coming out later in the year. So that's going to keep me busy. I know David's starting to write new music, so I'm sure I'll get a call at some point. But the show must go on.
Right on. Are either one of your boys interested in filmmaking?
My youngest son, Gabriel, he's got a really interesting eye, and he takes some pictures and he does some editing. And for his mum's birthday, he made a little animation of an exploding present, which was quite fun. So I think they see what I do, I think I'd love one of them to pursue a career in that line. So my niece, actually, she's just made a film that's been selected for a festival. So it seems to be in the family.
Oh, okay, cool. I know you're busy. I just have one more question. My podcast is called "Is Breakfast Included?" And if it was, what would you have?
I think I would have an eggs Florentine.
Oh.
Yeah. Spinach, poached egg.
Do you have any social media where people can find you, or you want to remain anonymous?
No, I'm not that anonymous. I have, I'm on Instagram. I think it's Gavin_Elder. That's the main one that I do.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm not that prolific with it, but every now and then I need to get back into it. I need to post a bit more.
Yeah. Well, Gavin, thank you so much for your time. Every time I see you walk in the room, you're not always there, but when you do show up, you're always smiling. You're always willing to answer questions and put up with me. And you actually showed me that there was a pro feature on the camera I let you use this week. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and thanks for your time.
All right. Thanks for doing this.
Cheers, Benny.
All right.
Well, right on. My good friend Gavin Elder. You can find him on social media at Gavin_Elder. And from there, you can link to heyluke.com, which is a collection of short films he's made. I'm sure you'll really enjoy them. Okay, everyone, I am done. Have a great day, and I'll talk to you next week.